Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking one of the absolutely most bizarre and honestly fascinating historical events on record, Major Meredith's failed emu mission. It's literally the moment modern military might went head-to-head with an unstoppable, chaotic force of nature in Western Australia. I mean, it sounds like pure fiction, right? But as we'll see from the data, it was a very real, very heavily armed operation. So get ready, because we're about to look at what happens when strict military doctrine meets the wild, unpredictable Australian outback. 20,000. Just think about that for a second. Imagine you're a farmer. You've poured your blood, sweat, and tears into your land. And suddenly, you look out at the horizon and see a massive flock of 20,000 giant, running birds charging right at your crops, completely destroying your livelihood. What on earth do you even do? It's an unimaginable scenario for most of us today. But in 1932, this was the terrifying reality for a group of farmers in Western Australia. To really get why this happened, we've got to look at the history. Okay, let's dive into this. To see exactly how this perfect storm brewed, we have to rewind to World War I. Between 1914 and 1918, the war raged, and thousands of Aussie soldiers fought overseas. After the conflict, the government set up the Soldiers' Settlement Scheme, basically giving returning veterans farmland in Western Australia, specifically in places like the Campion district, to build new lives growing wheat. But then, boom, 1929 hits. The Great Depression begins, and wheat prices just absolutely tank. So these veteran farmers are already under immense financial stress. Fast forward to 1932. Emus naturally migrate inland every year looking for food and water. But this year, an enormous migration of those 20,000 emus moved directly through these struggling farming regions. And look, we aren't talking about your typical garden pests here. These birds are huge. They stand about 1.8 meters, or roughly 6 feet tall. And they're athletic too, clocking speeds around 50 kilometers per hour. With their insanely strong legs and pinpoint eyesight, they're nearly impossible to catch. When these flocks descended, they didn't just eat the wheat, they completely trampled the fields. But the absolute kicker for the farmers, their massive size meant they easily smashed right through the fences, and that created a devastating ripple effect. Those broken fences basically rolled out the red carpet for rabbits to flood in, causing even more massive agricultural damage. So facing utter financial ruin from the Depression, and now watching their crops get decimated by giant lightning-fast birds, these farmers were desperate. But remember who these guys were. They were former World War I soldiers. So when faced with a massive invading force, their first thought wasn't exactly to call animal control, Their instinct was to call in the military. They directly asked the government for military support to deal with the emu threat. And the wildest part, the government actually said yes. This desperation birthed a literal boots-on-the-ground military operation. Major GPLW Meredith was put in command, and let me tell you, Meredith was not messing around. He brought serious firepower. We're talking heavy Lewis machine guns, 10,000 rounds of ammunition, and military trucks for mobility. I mean, looking at this arsenal, you'd expect an absolute overkill victory. Meredith and his men marched into the outback equipped to fight a conventional war, fully expecting to just effortlessly clear these birds out of the region. But the very first shots completely flipped the script. When the soldiers finally tracked down a large flock, they set up, waited for that perfect moment, and opened fire. Their expectation was simple: one easy, massive, densely packed target. Instead, reality hit hard. At the crack of gunfire, the emus didn't just freeze, they instantly scattered. Suddenly, instead of one giant target, Meredith's men were staring down dozens of smaller groups, darting incredibly fast in totally different directions. In that first attempt, they barely hit a thing. And this brilliantly illustrates the absurd clash between a rigid military tech and raw nature. The soldiers tried to lay down sustained fire to catch these scattering birds, but the Lewis machine guns just weren't built for this kind of chaotic, rapid shifting target practice. The weapons actually started to overheat and jam. The emus just kept moving, constantly shifting, making it an absolute nightmare for the soldiers to aim. The heavy weaponry, the exact thing that was supposed to guarantee an easy win, was mechanically failing against the sheer unpredictability of the birds. Realizing stationary tactics were a bust, Major Meredith decided to try a new mobile strategy. They mounted a heavy machine gun on the back of a military truck, thinking they'd just drive rapidly right alongside the fleeing birds and shoot on the run. Sounds like a solid, aggressive maneuver, right? Well, the reality was that the outback terrain was incredibly rough. The truck bounded and bounced wildly over the uneven earth, completely failing to keep pace with the nimble emus.
The gunner was getting tossed around so violently that accurate shooting didn't just become difficult, it became almost entirely impossible.
Which really brings us to a fascinating realization about the tactical superiority of the emus. The birds weren't using military strategy, obviously, but their pure survival instincts completely outclassed Meredith's troops. Emus naturally spread out instead of bunching up when threatened. Their large flocks seamlessly broke into unmanageable smaller groups. Their highly unpredictable speed and darting movements made them impossible to track with a heavy gun. And crucially, they had superior knowledge of the terrain. They navigated that rough, bouncy outback effortlessly, while the military trucks were literally shaking themselves apart trying to keep up. Of course, an event this chaotic does not go unnoticed. The Australian newspapers absolutely ate this story up. Reporters started humorously portraying the operation as if the highly trained Australian army were actively losing a tactical war to birds. And, this specific sensationalized framing by the press is exactly why this mission was famously dubbed the Great Emu War. It was never an official war, but the media painted such a hilarious picture of Meredith's men being outmaneuvered by feathered opponents that the name just stuck forever. Eventually, the government had to face facts. The military operation was officially suspended due to sheer ineffectiveness. After burning through massive amounts of time and ammo, the emu population remained largely untouched, and the crops were still in danger. But bringing us back to reality, this failure actually forced a shift toward far more practical agricultural solutions. Instead of machine guns, Australia gradually began relying on much stronger fencing to keep the emus out. They also rolled out bounty systems in some areas and went back to standard pest management methods that, actually worked. So the crucial point is separating the fun internet lore from the actual history. While you might hear that Australia officially declared war on emus, it was never a legal war. It was just a military culling operation. And despite all the memes saying the emus actively won a military battle, the truth is the operation simply failed to achieve its goal. The media nickname just made it sound like a literal victory for the birds. Also, you'll see a lot of exact kill counts floating around online. The reality there is that sources differ wildly. The only universally agreed upon fact is that relative to its goal, the operation was highly ineffective, which is exactly why it remains so famous today. This whole incredible historical event leaves us with a lot to chew on. The government tried to solve a complex agricultural and environmental issue by quite literally throwing machine guns at it, and they failed spectacularly. Only when they stepped back and used practical methods like stronger fencing did they find success. So I leave you with this. Does treating an ecological problem like a military battle blind us to the actual solutions? Think about how we interact with our environment today, and whether we're still trying to fight nature rather than work with it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.